गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। वणक्कम, जय हिंद एंड सत श्री अकाल। आज हम एक बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट विषय के बारे में बात करने वाले हैं। वो है कॉम्बैटिंग आइडियोलॉजिकल एडवर्सरीज। और इस इम्पोर्टेंट चीज के बारे में, इस इम्पोर्टेंट विषय के बारे में बात करने के लिए मेरे साथ हैं लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल प्रकाश मेनन and Lieutenant General Gautam Murthy. Sirs, good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot once again.
Good evening.
Good evening, Shankar. Thank you, and good evening and Jai Hind to all your viewers.
Thanks a lot, sirs. इससे पहले कि मैं आगे बढ़ूं and I talk about, we talk about combating, adversaries, ideological adversaries. I just want to give a overview कि ये इजराइल हमास वॉर के बारे में हमने बात क्या किया है, राइट? अभी तक क्या हमने किया है? पहले गना शॉट में हमने 8 वीडियो कर दिया और 2 अपडेट जो इसमें दर्शाए ने ऑन द इजराइल पैलेस्टाइन वॉर. Today is the 18th day, right? 19th day, I suppose. And we have done 8 videos already. Every second day we've been doing a video. And in the next 4-5 days, we're going to talk of a third week review tomorrow with General Ike Singha. We're going to talk of the technology in this war, which is very important for India, right? We're going to talk of the air and the air defense with the former DG of air defense. And then, of course, we're going to see, can Pakistan blitz India the way Hamas blitzed Israel? ये सब देखेंगे अगले एक हफ्ते के अंदर. पर अभी जो है हम वापस we will go back to the subject of our date, combating ideological adversaries. ये बात क्या है? What is this ideological adversaries? Why have I taken this topic? I must explain to everyone. If you look at Hamas, you look at Taliban, you look at even Pakistan, you look at many of these countries which have radical, terrorist groups. They are all ideologically motivated. And even in this, you see a lot of ideology in between Israel and Hamas. And though there is a lot of politics involved, there's a lot of other things involved, there's terrorism also. So ideology plays a big part in conduct of relationships between two nations, whether it's diplomatic or economic or even military. It's a tool for power. जब ये हालत है, हमारे सरहद के पार 2 नेशन हैं जो हमारे एडवर्सरीज हैं, वो एक पाकिस्तान और एक चाइना. एक पाकिस्तान believes in radicalism, radical terror groups, and it sponsors terror, right? It's a state sponsor of terror. We have no doubt about it. On the other hand, our northern adversary, or the northern, whatever you call it, China, is completely a hardcore communist nation. Sometime, say, around 2000 to about 2010, 12, 15, people thought that China was opening up reform and all that. But ever since Xi Jinping has come, he has gone completely ideologically back to the Mao and Marx kind of communism. And so we are combating a different kind of ideology across the Chinese border. So keeping these two in view, we need to know what ideology we need to do and how do we have to combat this. That is why I called to mature and knowledgeable officers who can handle this complex subject, because it is a complex subject. So what I'd request each of you, sir, is quickly, I'll give you a minute, you give your initial ideas about the whole business of combating ideology, and then I'll ask each one of you to take on one country each. So your initial views, General Menon, sir.
Thank you, Shankar. I think we must understand that the human struggle is enclosed within the breeding ground of politics. Politics is at the center of all struggle, and this struggle is perpetual. It's been part of human existence. It will continue to be part of human existence. In this struggle, the role of ideology would be, I think, paramount because it underpins your value systems, which are actually enclosed in your belief systems. And ideology, I think we must understand it and differentiate it from larger philosophical viewpoints by the fact that these are actionable beliefs. And that is why ideology normally finds itself translated into policy. And that's where the link is. So there is no country in the world which does not actually exist based on a particular ideology. The question is, how do you actually confront the ideological orientation of your adversaries while still preserving your own belief systems? That, I think, is the central challenge.
Thanks a lot, sir. I now request General Gautam Murthy, sir, your opening remarks.
You see, as General Menon said, I would like to add something to it. Violence is inherent in man. It has been proved from time immemorial. As much as good deeds are a part of us also is motivated by by violence, and you justify that violence based on an ideology, based on perceived or actual grievances. Men organize themselves, starting off from the olden days as tribes and clans, and and it goes on and on. Today we have the Westphalian state, the nation state, which has divided people across, but there will always be violence. And one of the strongest justification for violence, for organized violence, is ideology. And ideology is a very powerful magnet. Whether you're using religion as an ideology, whether you're using politics as an ideology, whether you're using your grievances as an ideology, it is a very powerful magnet, not only to attract your society and your people to support you, but also to get your people, your men in uniform or not in uniform, to be willing to lay down their lives for this particular abstract or maybe not so abstract ideology.
Right. Thanks a lot, sir, for your ideas. Ideology, as both of you have defined it, is a complex subject which motivates people to do something which is beyond themselves. Right. Very clearly, we have one ideology emanating from Pakistan and another ideology emanating from China. And we as a nation, as a democratic nation, who we believe constitutionally that we are secular, we don't have an ideology, right? And how do we counter these ideologies coming from the other side is the question which we have to answer. इसीलिए सबसे पहले हमें देखना पड़ेगा, इससे पहले कि हम इनके साथ जो भी करना चाहते हैं, हाउ डू वी हैंडल दिस आइडियोलॉजीज, हमें ये देखना चाहिए कि ये आइडियोलॉजी कहाँ से, किस तरीके से ये आ रहा है, या चाइना से या पाकिस्तान से. Sir, could you outline, General Prakash Menon, sir, could you outline the communist ideology and the highlights of it, which are going to impact us in combating them? Or rather, we will see how they manifest later, but I would like you to give an outline of this ideology as it exists in China today and emanating on to India.
I think when we talk about the fact that you're talking about the battle of ideologies, I think we should be very clear that it is not about our ideology versus their ideology. Where the battle is being fought. It is not for us imposing our ideology on them or they imposing their ideology. That is not the what do you call the dynamics of this battle. But what I think we need to understand about dealing with these adversaries is their ideological foundation, because that gives us
Yeah,
an
I
idea.
agree with you
I,
completely.
I gives us an idea of how they think, what are their interests, and how they are likely to actually achieve it. So, from that point of view, when I look at China, which actually is communist, Marxist, Leninist state in different stages of having opened up, and as you said, now trying to retract. But the fact remains that it is a system in which it is authoritarian. It's a central party state. The Communist Party is of paramount power. It has the military as its under it directly, and the government is the state is actually is is the state which is governed by the party, and that I think is a construction which we need to take into account when we look at it and where their ideology comes from. So the question really for us, as far as China is concerned, is that how much do we know of the ideological belief systems which today govern them, because some of them would have loosened over time. There is nothing written in stones about ideological beliefs, and how is that affecting their behavior, because that will give us an idea of what their intentions are. After all, when we ask ourselves why are they actually active on our northern border when they have so many other problems, we have to actually go down to see as to where does it come from, where does it originate. And when you look at that origination, it is in their belief systems. And I think in this particular case, as far as China is concerned, it it's out of it should be clear to us by now that it comes from the fact of their conception of the world order itself, and the fact they consider themselves to have been victimized, colonized, abused, and they want to come back where they think they rightfully belong in the world order. And it's not that India disputes that they should not be where they are, but I think our major point about this particular idea of their world order, and that they profess that they believe in a multipolar order, is that to us it is very clear that what China first seeks, apart from being a large hegemon in the world, is also a Sino-centric Asian order, which we are not willing to actually sort of tolerate. We do not believe in it. And I think if we rub up again, when we're rubbing up against the Chinese in ideological terms, it is about this their larger struggle at the global level and their larger struggle at the regional level. We are involved in both. And we are involved at the higher level because of India's size, its heft, and the fact that we are not a small guy, we can be wished away, we can be a spoiler in the works. And their greatest fear about us is that in this struggle, we actually shift our way towards the West. And that has always been their fear. So I think when we look at our problems, it is originated from an ideology which is rooted in what is the type of world order which we believe and we believe. It is from that struggle the others actually, that is the source of all the other problems as far as China
Yeah,
is.
would you say that the जो इनका जो सिविलाइजेशनल आउटलुक है और इनका जो बिलीफ सिस्टम ऑफ कम्युनिज्म also contributes to this ideology which reinforces their uh, outlook on the Sinocentric world order. That's one. The second part of this thing is if you go back in times, Mao always thought that the world order was to be decided between USA, USSR, and China, and India was only a peripheral state. And the conception which Xi Jinping thinks takes it a little further, where if he is looking at only states running the global order, he spoke of the G2, right? In which India doesn't have a part to play at all. And like you rightly said, in Asia, there's only one sword which can be in the sheath, and that's China, and India has no place. So, do you think that their ideology is driven by these factors also?
No, absolutely. I mean, the civilizational factor, the very fact is, if you look at what they actually have said, that they are the, I mean, after all, they're supposed to be all under the heavens. I mean, that's the word
Yeah,
which they actually use. That all the rest of the people, especially their periphery, are tributaries who actually have to bow down to Chinese authority. And in that notion of the world order, India does not agree with it, nor are they willing to suffer it. So while China, because of its size, can frighten the younger guys, they can't do that with a country of the size and heft of India. And they seem to, by the way, now know it. And that is why probably you find that the Chinese at the moment must be rethinking about how to handle the situation, because the Russians have got bogged down. Now there is this problem of the US in the Middle East. Uh, China probably sees that there is a benefit in both, and we'll have to see as to how would they deal with us now, considering the fact that the dynamics of the world system itself is in transition, the geopolitical. How will they make use of this opportunity? The question we have to ask ourselves is, will they be more accommodative or more aggressive? And that, I think, is a question which we can discuss,
we'll
because
talk
that
of it.
okay.
Right. Now, I'd like to shift to Pakistan. And General Gautamurthy, sir, if you could highlight the ideological, winds which blow from Pakistan, though most of us are generally acquainted with it, I think that's a more virulent ideology which comes from there. So, if you could highlight some of those issues and discuss them. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. You see, Pakistan is a revisionist state. Pakistan was created out of the two nation theory, which says very clearly that Muslims and Hindus are completely different people. We are not the same, there's nothing in common, and therefore we have to live separately. Now, when you start off your very foundation of your nation based on that, whatever course correction their founder may have tried within the first few days of the formation of Pakistan, when he says you're free to go to your temples and free to go to your churches, does not actually hold water, because then the question is asked that if we were free to do that, we could have done that in a united India. Why did we have Pakistan? So, Pakistan's basic underpinnings is Islam, and Islam as an ideology is a very powerful ideology. This powerful ideology has been guiding Pakistan, and more importantly, guiding the Pakistan army, which sees itself as the defender of the two nation theory, as the defender of this ideology, and as superior to India mentally, spiritually, and in fighting capabilities. The Pakistan army has seen itself as a protector of this Islamic ideology, and its conflict with India, it has framed it in very civilizational terms. That is basically the ideology for Pakistan and for the Pakistan's army. Resisting India's rise is not only an ideological goal, it is the basic ideational goal for the Pakistan army. that, you see, they have not realized that their agenda has posed very heavy costs upon the nation, as you can see the state of Pakistan today. So, whatever it be, India is framed in their thinking as a Hindu state, and them as the true inheritors of the rulers of India. They quote both the Mughal Empire in the north and Tipu Sultan in the south and said we had complete, because the Nizam of Hyderabad, and said we had complete control over India. The British came in. The British, so we ought to have got control of India all over again, and India should have been an Islamic country, and the Hindus subject to this. So they are looking at it from this point of view.
Right, sir. Uh, Let me put another, I won't say a thought. I'll put a thought in addition to what you have said. A large part of their ideology, don't you think, is reinforced by the fact that they've lost successive wars, including the proxy war, which they're now losing after 30 odd years, and their shift to radicalism, using radical Islam as a tool for war, and thereafter, overall, that conflated with the fact that they are always seeking revenge against India. Your views?
You see, for the Pakistan Army, as Christine Fair has very clearly brought out in her book, and also by a number of other writers, simply retaining the ability to challenge India is victory. To acquiesce to India's big brother status or its strength is is tantamount not only to a defeat, but it is fundamentally eroding the legitimacy of the Pakistan state. They have managed to snatch a sort of a refined, redefined sense of victory from every defeat. Even the 1971 war, where they've lost half the country, they don't look at the fact that they've lost half the country. They look at what they've done in the West, how they've challenged the army in the India in the West. They are looking at it from this point of view and say they were subverted in the East. And what is even more important is that they have an ideology within an ideology. I will just explain what I am saying. You see, in Pakistan, when we talk about Pakistan, let's be very clear, we are talking about the Pakistan Army. The
Yeah,
Pakistan Army has taken upon itself to be the ideological force for keeping Pakistan united and for prosecuting whatever adventures or whatever they've tried against India. All their major domestic and foreign policies is controlled by the Pakistan Army. They defer to civilian authority only in public, with gestures of saluting, this, that, everything else. You'd find them absolutely standing at attention and talking to the political masters. But we know what happens within closed doors. Ever since the inception of Pakistan, the army has controlled this domestic or foreign policy for all its history, I'll say. And therefore they use the state for their own institutional ends. So you see, in Pakistan army tells the country that we are looking after you, and because we are looking after you, you have to look after us. You see the circle that they have got themselves into, and we can see even as of today, neither the state nor the army has been, or the society has been able to break out of this circle
circle.
that they have got themselves involved. They have been very effective at ensuring that the civilian institutions and even ordinary Pakistanis share their strategic concerns, their priorities. So they get widespread support. The only time, every time any politician or any political party or anyone from the media tried to say no, thus far and no further, they were dealt with very, very severely. And therefore, the people of Pakistan, the society of Pakistan, political parties of Pakistan find it expedient to go along with the Pakistan army. And there is no way that the Pakistan army does not use it, this dependence of the civilians upon them, to further their own institutional interests. So, this is the underpinning of Pakistan, and this is the ideology within an ideology. Now,
Right,
coming
sir.
to your question about radicalism, Pakistan has always been able to ride two horses and they think they're riding it well. But we know what it has done to the Pakistan state. Privately, they may admit it. They do admit it privately. I've even had the occasion of a Pakistani general telling me when I was a brigadier that we have created a Frankenstein's monster and today we are paying the price. They admit it. Yet they prosecute, they use the same forces with the underpinning of Islam to launch terrible, terrible acts against India. One is you can
So we'll come to
understand
that.
launch of
We'll
anything.
come to
Yes.
that.
Okay,
We'll
we'll
come
come
to
to
that.
that. So
Right.
what I
So
want to tell you is that for them to simply give up and accept status quo and India's supremacy for them is defeat.
right, sir.
Challenging India
Right.
and keep on challenging India is may not be victory, but at least that yes, we are superior. That
Okay.
feeling.
Right, sir. Now we have put the respective ideologies in context. Let's get it down to the subcontext or in the prevalent scenario of the Israel-Hamas war. Right. In this kind of a setup, how do you see this manifestation of ideology against India? I mean, it's a very simple question. How does this ideology, which you have outlined, gets manifested against India? We'll first take China, sir. Then Prakash Menon, sir, over to you.
We are trying to actually now use the forces generated by the Hamas Israeli war and try to see as to how does it impact India. Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, yes, sir. That's the whole idea
Okay.
because
All right.
and that it's got an ideological subtext to this
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
story.
I mean, I think this question really requires to try and interrogate what is actually happening, because all this is happening right now as we talk.
Yes,
And
sir.
what has actually happened is there are two ideological clashes which are fundamental, which is about Islam and Judaism, which is there underpinning the Hamas
Israel.
Israel war. Okay. Now, these two clashes has in India generated a dynamic where our social media and many other platforms have now used this to actually lambaste the minority community, especially the Muslims in India, and try to show them in the poorest of light, obviously speaking from a majoritarian quadrant. And therefore, I think the larger effect is that it'll probably deepen what is an already existing state a degree. I mean, this can be, of course, this thing, polarization of communities, which has taken place in India for quite some time. So I think the effect of this war is again about widening the chasm between, uh, or let's say, deepening our communal fault line than what it was before. And I think that is what should be worrying us.
Right. How do you see this impacting with the, or if you see the communist ideology transposing itself on this divide, and how do you see them exploiting it, or how do you see China using their ideologies to undermine us?
I do not see China actually using this particular, uh, because China doesn't believe in any gods in any way. So,
Yeah,
and I think at an economic level, our, you can say that we are doing pretty well in terms of trade. But I think the larger battle which is going on, which is about the global struggle, is what China is worried about. And in that, if you look at it, China would probably see that the American ability to strengthen us in defensive terms by actually giving us the wherewithal which it has promised, there are a whole lot of efficiencies, would probably be slowed down, because United States of America has to now cater for strengthening Ukraine and the Europeans, and now Israel. So that is going to take a toll of the aid that it can provide us, because for them the priority therefore changes. So let's be very clear about it, that what we were expecting may not go at the same pace. Although we'll have statements promising, but we must be now ready that this help which they were promising is not going to flow at the same rate at which we have. This will probably be one. And two, I think we will have a major problem about where we stand in what is going on right now in that war, because although initial statement of the Prime Minister was only to do with the terrorist act which was perpetuated by the Hamas, and he commented on that, but it was seen largely as India taking sides with Israel, which was really not the case, because later on it was
yeah,
balanced by
it was
outspoken,
clarified.
that it was clarified. But now, what would should be India's stance on the fact that, if you look at the type of bombing which has taken place even in the last 24 hours, and the type of destruction which is being uh, put on the Gaza city, I think at some stage India will have to take a call and call it out, because what we are seeing now is a humanitarian disaster.
Crisis developing this.
Even the United States Nations Secretary General today has actually made such a strong statement that Israel wants him to be sacked. The fact is, can India remain silent on that account? If it remains silent, won't it be seen as having been one-sided? Not because we are saying at one stage that we are actually we believe in this two nation theory. We have balanced in our approach, but if we don't take that call and we don't call them out, probably that may not look well with the people in our own country, and with the Islamic nations outside, especially in the Middle East.
Right. So yeah, you've outlined brought a lot of clarity. The ideology from China will not affect us directly, right? And uh, either diplomatically, economically, or anything, we have enough heft to handle it. But what will happen is that China will exploit this stand, or the duality of our stand, right, to their advantage. And this duality of our stand will also put us on the horns of a dilemma as to what is the further course of action in the international stage as we take it. And of course, the promised partnership, or I wouldn't say the promised partnership, the partnership with USA is going to slow down a bit, and we will see how it goes. But I think against Pakistan, we have a more explicit case, or rather a more direct case, where the Hamas kind of ideology can be transposed, and domino effect can happen on Pakistan, based on its past performance and past ideologies. And General Gautam Murthy sir, how do you contextualize this in our context from Pakistan?
All right. Firstly, about India's stand, as General Menon brought out, India had taken a balanced stand in the beginning. The Prime Minister, immediately at the end of the terrorist act, as soon as it came to light, I think the entire country's sympathies were with the victims and the citizens of Israel. But with the unrelenting aerial bombardment of Gaza and images of children and women and hospitals, or whatever may be the case, I mean, Israel may be right in saying it was a misguided rocket, but it is not facts that count, it is a perception that counts. This is a war also of perceptions. And over here, I'm afraid Israel has been the victim, but it is also on the losing side in the battle for perceptions. They may be making movies of what has happened and maybe showing how babies were burnt and everything else, but the images of unrelenting bombing, aerial bombardment, and General Menon, of course, is one of our foremost infantry generals who had great experience in counterinsurgency, and he would be the first to say that the stupidest way to fight counterinsurgency is to use air. You don't use air power to fight counterinsurgency. And Israel, to my mind, is doing not only this, you got 200 of your own citizens buried in the tunnels or maybe in the apartment buildings that you're bombing. Why would you do this? Why would you be putting your own citizens in harm's way? But having said that, let me also say, again, I'll just finish on this and then we'll get on to our context, get on to your answer, is that while everyone is asking Israel to stop the aerial bombardment, why are people not asking the Hamas to allow Palestinians to flee to south of Gaza? Nobody is asking the Hamas to also ensure that they are not used as human shields. But Hamas being a terrorist group, and now what is happening? The Hamas's problems and the Palestinian problems are being conflicted. There are two distinct entities altogether. Hamas may be Palestinian, members may be Palestinians, but it is not, it may have won the elections, but it is certainly not the voice of the Palestinian people. Yasser Arafat himself accepted Israel as a state, whereas Hamas's charter wants Israel wiped off the planet of the earth and the Jews driven into the sea or wherever. Now, coming to our context, how do we see it in our adversarial relationship with Pakistan? There is no doubt that not only Muslims, whether it's India, Pakistan, or Hindus of India, since the religious context has been brought about, they have their sympathies with the people who are bombed, with the women and children and old people trying to flee the bombing. But that does not mean that the average Muslim of India would support a cruel and barbaric act of the Hamas, of what the Hamas did. Let us not forget our 26/11. Now, whether Pakistan, how would they see it? I do not believe that Pakistan, I mean, we have to keep our powder dry, there's no reason not to. But I do not believe that they would try to do anything as foolish, because what are you trying to get out of it? Are you trying to bring, like Hamas tried to bring the Palestinian cause to the forefront? Can you today actually bring the Kashmir cause to the forefront? Because the whole world is seeing what is happening in JNK, and all the world is seeing what is happening in POK. Other than a few mainstream political parties, other than some of these tanzeems the terrorist groups of both Pakistan and India, the rest of the people are reasonably happy with the state of peace that has come about in J&K. There is a strong radical element. I'm not denying that that's being egged on by the fundamentalists. There is political opposition against defanging of against Article 370 and 35A that have been rendered virtually toothless. There is disinformation campaign by the ISPR. But at the same time, there are lots of administrative, infrastructural, educational, economical, economy growth that is taking place in J&K. So I'm afraid that the two cannot be compared. There is no comparison to my mind.
Right,
General
sir.
Menon
Yeah.
would
No,
maybe like to.
I will come to that. I have one more question. Do you see some kind of a ideological ignition taking place because of this in Pakistan towards India?
I don't think there's anything towards India right now. It's 19 days into the war. No such statements. In fact, what is happening in the Pakistan press is more about Nawaz Sharif coming back, about them getting the act together. Yes, expressing solidarities with the Palestinians have always been there. But we have not seen any such large-scale demonstrations that have been taking place in the capitals of Europe, for example. We have not seen such large-scale demonstrations in Pakistan. Everyone is expressing their solidarity. They are all 100% on the side of Israel. And as far as India is concerned, there has been no overt statement that has come about.
Right.
Shankar, may I? Shankar, may I?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead. Please, sir.
Uh, I'm in slight disagreement with what General Gautam has said. I think what we have to be cognizant of that we can already see that it has inflamed passions of the Muslim community all over the world, and we
Yeah,
can
that's
see
why I
that.
spoke of ideological ignition.
Yeah. And
I,
I think to say that Pakistan will not be touched by that inflammation and some of that will not be directed against us, I think I don't agree with that. Pakistan probably will get inflamed if it is not. It's a matter of time. And some of that energy will find their way towards India, is what I would actually think.
No, okay. No, I would like to take it further. How do you visualize this getting directed, and how do you see it affecting us? Now that I think you have a strong case when
See,
we start
I think,
considering that.
yeah, I think what we should be worried about, and that is, I think, before that, we should, I think, let me just clarify what my thoughts are on the issue of ideology and relationship itself between nations. They need not have a common ideology to actually cooperate and be operating
Yes,
together as long as they have common interests in mind. That is the only thing which matters. Sometimes interest will get distilled from common ideology. But in Pakistan's case, which is based mostly on a theocratic state as its nature, and from China's case, is it's based completely on political issues, which is of a global and regional nature. So the roots of the ideology are different, but that doesn't mean that they can't cooperating, and they have been cooperating for a long time. So differences in ideology do not actually pose any opposition to cooperation in the political sphere. That's point one. And therefore, what we should be worried about, and this I think it should what should be I think, if there is an inflammation of emotions which takes place in Pakistan, and if China actually wants to create trouble for us, the
they'll
combination
inflame.
could be
Yeah,
could be actually a terrorist attack directed from or through Pakistan on us, ideally for them. on a religious target. They would expect that the Indians, who are divided in many manners, would therefore do it to themselves. They don't have to do more than that. And China could then make use of this opportunity to do more damage towards us in the northern border or wherever they want to do it. But this
Oh
is a
yeah,
strategic imagination. This is purely an imagination, is a strategic threat which we cannot discount, because the chances
right.
of this threat taking place are increasing primarily because of what is happening in the global sphere.
So what you have actually said, sir, is that this ideological threat is amorphous at this point of time. We cannot define where the target is. Of course, you put across one scenario, but there could be more. It is amorphous, but it is certain. And as time goes by, the way things are going there, passions could get more inflamed. If passions do get more inflamed, the chances of something manifesting itself in India in a violent manner, right, as a domino effect is there. And that is something which we have to deal with. But don't you think there are certain long term effects also because of this conflation of ideology and the way we have taken a stand, whichever way we have taken our stand, especially from Pakistan, which will now even more not come to talk to us, or rather be even more inimical to us, which China will exploit and put us in a bigger problem.
So that's what it is. So now we are in a place where the geopolitical turbulence, not within the neighborhood, not between us, but other at the regional and global level, are going to cast a shadow on our relationships, and that's
Yeah.
going to be a
So
major point, which is actually going
major,
to spoil the relationship further.
yes, I'm completely with you, sir. That I think is a major thing which today, if one thing which has come out is that yes, ideology is going to affect us. We are under the threat of an amorphous ideology, amorphous threat, undefined, but it is there. And the global events there and the ideology which flows out from there is going to put us in a tight spot in our own global situation, right? And our right, these two things are there. Okay. So the next moot question: how do we handle this problem? How do we head it off? How do we do what we are supposed to do to ensure that we continue to progress? After all, you spoke of interest. When you say interest, our interest at this point of time is to maintain peace, not get into a war or anything with anyone, and continue to progress and play a positive role globally. That's a different story. So taking these into thing and the threat which we have defined for ourselves and the global scenario, what it is, what do you think we should do, and what should we be doing to continue on
So,
our path?
as you said, if we have answered the question, what is it that we want to achieve in this scenario over which you have not much control? Let me tell you, your
Yeah,
control of this scenario is not. You're not the major player there. There are many other players. So once you have decided what is your interest, the question is what is apparent to us is, if these big guys are actually getting into a fight, then the ideal thing, and I'm talking about ideal, is that we don't get involved in the fight, that we actually let them fight, and at the end of it, probably we will be the greater beneficiaries. But the question really is this a feasibility, and will it be, when questioned, in our favor or not? So let me first talk about whether it can be in our favor. And I would think I would venture to suggest that not getting involved in that larger fight would be a beneficiary to us, because it will present us with opportunities when finally things will hopefully stabilize, because we would actually be closer to both of them than they are closer to each other, and that, I think, would be a better position that India would possibly be. That's point one. Whether it is feasible or not, and I think that is where the larger challenge of statecraft and diplomacy lies at the moment. We must be very clear that when our direct interests are involved, and especially on the northern borders, nobody is going to come to help us. We will have to fight it on our own. Maximum we can probably expect is intelligence and the rest of it. But that fight, and I think we are quite capable of doing it
Oh,
with the
hold on.
forces that we have and with the terrain which is in our favor and so on. So that is not going to be an issue. He can bite here, he can bite there, and that's the
But
sort of
that's
thing.
about all.
Yeah. So
Right.
the question
Yeah.
really is not to get involved in somebody else's fight. That is the challenge. And I think if statecraft, we can play the game well, we can probably not get sucked in. But you never know. We must be prepared that we might be. And in that case, what should we do is also should be part of it. In that case, we at least know that which side we are most likely to be in case we get into a fight.
Okay. Right. So you actually outlined the thing that we should, two things: we shouldn't get involved in that fight, and at a later stage, when things cooler and saner heads start prevailing, taking into consideration that we are close to both sides. Actually, we are equidistant to both sides, really speaking. We have one of the best credentials to bring about peace, and when we do that, the a whole lot of this ideological factor from Pakistan also gets diluted. And I think that's what you actually put across in what you have you know articulated. I think that's a very viable way to go forward. So your views, General Gautam Murthy, sir.
See, I couldn't agree more with General Menon. In fact, right now we have sent humanitarian aid for the Gazan refugees and for the Gazan people. We have made it. We will continue to. We will always ask for a two-state solution. Please do not forget that our Prime Minister also visited Ramallah. Apart from visiting Tel Aviv, he returned, and then later on, subsequently, when he had gone to Jordan, he went to Ramallah and he spoke with he expressed solidarity with the Palestinian people. Our uh, external affairs, our foreign policy has been very good in the recent past. We have forged strategic partnerships with almost 30 countries. We are trusted by UAE, we are trusted by Saudi Arabia, we are trusted by a number of Islamic countries. We have problems with Pakistan, of course. Turkey, as you know, Turkey is now uh, more inclined towards Pakistan, but we are in a very good place to be able to help and to add and to bring down the temperatures. I completely agree with General Menon. We should not get involved in the fight. We should get involved in the peace process, but not take sides today. It is our core interests that count. We do not take sides. There would be pinpricks, must be ignored.
Right. Thank you, sirs, for this wonderful discussion. We've gone beyond our own ideological frontiers, the ideological adversaries which we have to face. And one of the things which amply comes out is that we have to look beyond these ideological adversaries in the larger sphere, system in which we are operating, and that's where our strengths come in, and that's where we have opportunities also, and that's where we have some dangers also. So, with this, sir, could I take a few questions, if you don't mind?
Of
Because,
course.
right. Uh, okay. The first question is from Anand. Anand says, would the generals agree that the ideals of Khalistan, Pakistan, China, Hamas, and parts of the West, it seems to me that they are all fundamentally chauvinists. Even China's communism, even China's communism at its crust has a conceited middle kingdom ideal. General Prakash Menon, sir, you're all yours because you
Yeah.
spoke of it at the start.
Yeah. Let's I think uh, we must understand in the international system that we are in today, sovereignty is one of the what is guaranteed in that system. In practice, we will we might practice it indifferently. Every country is free to believe in what they think is right. And therefore, even when you disagree with another country, at least in India, we are not in the business of telling others that this is not right and this is what the right thing to do and be like us. I mean, the fact that the United States talks about human rights and preaches this even to us and the rest is actually highly hypocritical, because if anybody has violated human rights in the world, it is probably the United States of America, and the number of innocent people they have killed. Only thing, they do it from far and they can get away with it. So the point is, all these things which the countries which you have mentioned, the groups which you have measured, what India is saying is there should be, it should function within the system of international law and what is accepted in international interaction. Terrorism definitely is not acceptable for India in that system. So any of these things which we think is a terrorist act, which is about actually killing civilians, innocent civilians, and trying to actually impose terror on the population, is what India is against. So it doesn't matter who they are, whether they are Hamas or whether they are some band in Israel or somebody else in Pakistan. For us, the issue is that any group practicing terrorism or supporting terrorism is actually, we are not in agreement, and if they are practicing against us, we definitely think that is adversarial, and it is an inimical act.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Akila. Says, I always have a doubt that do ideologies drive them to wars, or do their aim to win over a country using ideology as a weapon knowingly? Then Gautam sir.
You see, the thing is, ideology is the underpinning uh, of some nation states. Pakistan, classic example. China, classic example. Though China has veered away from the original communist ideology and made it more of a national ideology. About national aspirations and the Middle Kingdom, as General Menon brought up.
Good.
Ideology can work up to a point. After that, it is counterproductive to my manner. When it comes down to actual war fighting, ideology is not going to be of much help. Your professionalism will help, your weapons and equipment will help, your training will help. These factors will help, and it is certainly not ideology, because you can have, if you take a religion, you take Islam, you find countries 100% Muslim fighting each other. Groups 100% Muslim fighting each other. Groups versus countries, countries versus groups. So ideology takes you up to a point. Religion takes you up to a point. After that, who will prevail? Ultimately, it is your weapons, equipment, training, your capabilities, your capacities, your motivation, morale, all these factors come in.
May I,
Right.
may I, may
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
may I
please, sir.
just,
Please.
I mean, a slightly different variation. There is no country in the world which does not have an ideology. Our ideology, in fact, is there in the Constitution of India itself, of what we actually believe, what we think our value systems are. And there are liberal ideologies, there are authoritarian ones, and also theocratic states and so on. A whole host of them which can be classified in terms of political science. But the root of all conflicts cannot possibly be classified as ideological battle, because of the fact that the reason, it might be completely different, and it might have nothing to do with the belief systems of both. It might have to do more and more with the belief systems, or with access to resources, with due to land, because of the fact that people are looking for more land than what they actually have. So ideology will underpin the way you behave it will not actually be the reason to go to war. And that is why, as General Gautam said, you can have this, you can belong to the same religious ideological base, but you can still go to war. So that is not going to keep it away. The ideological battle for us, which I think we need to remember, is that it is able to, this would probably give us a better idea of of how a state will behave, and especially we need to do it when the state is adversarial to us, like Pakistan and China.
Yeah. And violent ideologies, the states and people who practice ideologies based on violence will always tend to go to war, no matter what the aspirations are. Right? Just to, the whole thing. And we'll have to keep that in mind. In our Rashtra, all school going children, irrespective of our diversity, should learn and understand the Bhagavad Gita. This is our superior ideology and effective defense, your views. Anyone, sir?
I thought this is out of context. It's syllabus
Out,
mein nahi
Okay.
hai.
out of
Okay,
context.
fine. But
See,
the
it is your
yeah,
own
okay.
belief system. You follow
It's
it.
a belief system. I think in our context, I think one of the best belief systems in our thing is our constitution, which I think caters for every kind of ideology which all our religions profess. And if you read the constitution, it caters, gives a space for everyone. In fact, if you really look at the currency note of ours with all the languages given in that, right,
True.
gives you the right space. Other day someone said, "Why don't you speak only in Hindi? Because that's our national language." So I showed a 5 rupee note or a 50 rupee note and said, "Look, you look at any note, whether from 1 rupee note of the year or a 500 rupee note today, every language which there is a national language." And I think for a diverse country like us, our constitution is the best solution. And while I don't decry the fact that Bhagavad Gita is a fantastic book, and it has all ideals, but at the same time, some people might not follow it. So we have to have that capability of freedom of religion and belief. Okay. Uh, right. I will not talk of secularity, and I will not talk of all this. Okay, a general thing. Such tough issues in our country are avoided due to political correctness or extreme sensitivity, or tackle anything deemed as politically uncomfortable, hurting our internal security. Thus, that's a fact, JPJP, because our country is so diverse. We have different beliefs, right? You just see what's happening in Manipur. Just the
Just
two
to come in.
tribes, one community and a tribe. Meiteis are a community, Kukis are a tribe. The belief systems of just these two small people have, you know, brought about segregation of land. It's something like, you all already ghettoized them. So just think, if you put it in a
It's
larger context, we have a lot of problems. So we have to be sensitive to each other. Otherwise, we are going to have problems in this thing. Okay, right. So, what is more dangerous, religious radical ideology or radical nationalism mixed with ideology? What elicits a stronger response from the hoi poly, and why? Anyone, sir?
May I? I think both are dangerous, completely avoidable, and it is best, as General Menon said, we have our constitution, we continue, we have many fault lines in our country. We should not be exacerbating those fault lines. On the contrary, we should try and bridge those fault lines. You mentioned Manipur, right? Actual partition has taken place. It is so sad. We cannot afford it. And India is a land of so many people, so many dialects, so many languages, religions, everything else. So we cannot give in to any ideology, whether it's based on religion, whether it is based on strong belief systems, whether it's based on political beliefs. There's nothing. We are a country that everyone has to. We have got to take everyone along. That is
Yeah.
important.
And as far as our adversaries are concerned, depending on what kind of ideology, which is more dangerous, is all contextual at a point of time in a particular setting, right? So more than that, I don't think we can take a you can take a generic view on this whole story. Okay, this is a very pretty direct question. So, which are the cracks in the Pakistani ideological belief systems?
Ah, there are cracks, there are cracks, and there are cracks. You're seeing it happening in front of you. Uh, Pakistan has been driven by ideology, has been driven by these cracks within the groups itself that form Pakistan. The Balochis, the Sindhis, the Punjabis, the Pashtos. There are enough cracks. And what is perceived today, rightly or wrongly, is that the Pakistan army is mainly a Punjabi speaking army, and the others are minorities, notwithstanding the fact that people like Musharraf have also become the chief, who was a Muhajir. These cracks in the Pakistan society manifest itself because of poverty, because of, again, strong religious beliefs. It cannot be that both of you are worshipping the same God and killing each other in the name of the same God. You get what I mean? You are cannot afford to do that. So there are enough fault lines in Pakistan's ideology. There are enough cracks in that. They are dealing with it. India, as a responsible state, should not get involved, is in any case not involved, and should not get involved in what is happening there. Let them sort it out. We just want uh, a peaceful Pakistan that does not, sort of trouble India now and in the future.
You see,
Maybe just
let me put it in a slightly different context. Their ideological beliefs, Pakistani ideological beliefs, force them to put a particular kind of government in Afghanistan. That very government and very setup is now biting them. That's the
yes,
biggest
yes.
crack. Okay, okay.
Wonderful example.
So
Wonderful
that
example.
is happening, and down the line, maybe sometime when next week or maybe about 5-10 days later, we will have a thing on what's happening in Pakistan on this issue. We'll focus on it because it is relevant to our whole story. Okay, so how uh, h- India always tries for a better relationship with Turkey. Recently helped during Turkey's earthquake, but Erdogan does not seem to reciprocate it. Why? Is it for ideological reasons? Anyone, sir?
Yeah, I think you're right in the sense that in spite of actually putting out a hand and trying to befriend Turkey, Turkey has generally uh, held fast to its particular stand of showing its partiality towards Pakistan whenever they're, every time they are the ones who raise the Kashmir issue for the Pakistanis in the United Nation. And basically, ever since the advent of Erdogan as a state, and it's moving away from the secular foundations which Ataturk had actually put in place, we see the orientation of Turkey turning towards uh, uh, favoring Pakistan and the um Islamic countries over India. Now, why is it so? Because I think, as far as Turkey is concerned, the game that it is playing in the geography that it is there, it finds Pakistan more useful than India, and but that does not mean that our tourism and other sort of um, you can say relationships are not there. The political orientation is likely to continue as long as Turkey finds Pakistan useful. It is not something because they like Pakistan, but they find it Pakistan is useful at the moment. Moment that shifts, and I think Turkey will also shift. I've just been, in fact, to Istanbul about 3 weeks ago, and one of the things that you really you can feel it when you are there is how much of India is there in Istanbul in terms of the language, especially of the language and so on, that we seem to have a civilizational connect, which is actually the same because Pakistan is part of our civilization. And that I think is a factor which we can't wish away. So at the moment, the political ambience does not seem to favor, but I think it's a matter of time before it shifts.
Right, sir. Thanks a lot. I think we've had a very interesting discussion. It's a very amorphous subject and probably a tough subject which we've taken. We've tried to put certain fundamental things across. And then the answer which we've got today is it doesn't matter what ideology comes from across Pakistan or from across China. We have to have a balanced way of handling all this. And in the context of the larger issue which is happening in Ukraine and in Israel, right, we have to have a very balanced view because the world is changing very fast. And we can't swing to one way or the other because if you do that, our national interests are at stake. With this, sir, if you have anything to say for a minute, I'd request you to wrap it up and then I'll call it a day. General
Thank you.
Gautam Murthy,
All
sir.
is said and done.
Thank you, General Shankar and Gunnar Short. The last thing that I would like to state is that in the context of Pakistan, since you mentioned it, and there's one thing that I wanted to put across, is that do you realize that they use the word jihadi when that terrorist is fighting with India or doing something in J&K, but they use the word Deshatgardi when the same fellow
It's their
is
side.
doing something in, then they don't call him a jihadi.
Yeah.
Springs from that ideological underpinning of Pakistan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
Thank you. We've had a wonderful discussion. Thank you, General Menon, sir.
Thank you.
And
So,
thank you all.
at the end, thanks a lot to General Menon and thanks a lot to General Gautam Murthy for having, you know, spoken about this topic. Not many people would have spoken about it, right? The way they've spoken. Thanks a lot, sir. And I thought we had some very wonderful questions also coming out from the audience, which they've also made us think a bit, right? And thanks a lot to all of you. Good evening and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good night. Bye bye.